Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining us today is Vince Poscente, a multiple international best-selling author, a Winter Games Olympian, and a Hall of Fame speaker. Author of the New York Times bestseller, The Age of Speed, and the International Bestselling Phenomenon, The Ant and the Elephant, Leadership for the Self. He has a new book titled The Earthquake, Your Journey From Setback to Breakthrough, which is set to be released this month and is endorsed by the Dalai Lama, who said this book will inspire many to meet the difficult challenges of life. At age 26, Vince decided he was going to become an Olympian, and he went from being a recreational skier to one of the top 10 speed skiers in the world. In the past decade, Vince has led expeditions to the summit of the Himalayas. And as a renowned expert in resiliency and overcoming setbacks, he's had an incredible speaking career for the past 2 decades plus. MPI ranked Vince as one of the top 10 motivational speakers in the world, and Meetings and Conventions magazine named him Meeting Planners' favorite speaker. So please join me now with the awesome Vince Poscente. Well, hello, Vince Poscente. How are you doing, sir? Thank you for joining me here on Virtually Speaking.
Good to see you, Chris.
Thank you. It's been great to always check in with you and know you for all these years, and I'm so happy to have you here. I've been excited about this one, and I'm really excited about the fact you have a book coming out in 2 weeks or less called
Less than 2 weeks. Yeah, countdown.
Yeah, The Earthquake, right? Which is kind of reminds me of where I live here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, might not sell well in California, but it's about personal earthquakes, so we can all identify with those.
Oh yeah, and you have a great subtitle, which is
Your Journey From Setback to Breakthrough.
Yeah, Your Journey From Setback to Breakthrough. I love that. And we will definitely talk about that. I'm excited to. And of course, your story is amazing. I've been telling people your story for many years. I've known you for many years. And I remember yours is one of the first videos I ever saw of
really?
a speaker speaking when I started into this business. It was on a VHS tape. That's right, folks.
How old are we?
I remember when we shifted from VHS tapes to DVDs.
Right.
Big deal. And when I started Cal Entertainment, I was like, you know what? No more DVDs, no more VHS tapes, only YouTube. And people, 15 years ago were I think YouTube was a little scary for some people. So
yeah,
it's amazing how things have changed. But of course, your story is amazing. You were 26 years old.
right.
You were just hanging out wherever you were. You're like, I want to be in the Olympics. Is that what happened?
Yeah, basically, I raced in luge for a couple years and but quit. And at the opening ceremonies, 26 years old, watching some of my luge buddies march in the opening ceremonies, and I'm in the stands with a ticket. Like I was going, oh, you got to commit, you got to engage, you got to go into that uncertainty. And 4 years later, I was vying for the gold medal in the Olympic Games in the sport of speed skiing, and went 135 miles an hour, and my hair turned white.
Oh, that's how it happened. I get it.
Yeah.
So you went from luge into speed skiing?
Yeah. Well, there's windows of opportunity, and you choose the opportunity that presents itself. That's the best opportunity, I would say. And I had raced in speed skiing. Well, I've got a little recreational thing. And in luge, I ended up being the executive director for luge and leading up to the Olympics in Calgary. And you've heard of politics in sport, and it was so prevalent in that sport. I just thought it was too hard to go uphill on that one. And but speed skiing would be a demonstration sport in the Olympic Games, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun just to march in the opening ceremonies? But I put together this program, this mental training program that was so effective that not only was I going to the Olympic Games, I went into the Olympic Games ranked 10th in the world. And there were legitimate ski racers who were also trying to get into the Olympic Games, and people that had quit downhill and gone into speed skiing, or former world record holders. So it wasn't a layup at all. It was definitely a challenge to be able to get to those Olympics. But in hindsight, looking back, that mental training strategies that I used as an athlete also worked in sales and leadership. And then I ended up giving speeches at conferences, and that's how we met.
Yeah. That's amazing. I definitely want to dive into those that method that you came up with, and at
Right.
age 26. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
But so just to let everybody know, so you're going up this huge ladder, right? Or stairs, and you're how many stories high is this? I just want people to get the
On
visual.
speed skiing?
Yeah.
So we typically build these tracks in avalanche chutes. So there's no jump. You're thinking of maybe ski jumping where they launch off like that. In speed skiing, when you're going straight down, you're trying to be the fastest person through the speed trap at the bottom. So
Right.
in all ski disciplines, there's a timing light at the top and bottom. In speed skiing, both those timing lights in a speed trap are 100 meters long, about the length of a football field.
Okay.
And in speed skiing, you go 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds.
Oh.
A Ferrari can only do it in 4.
Right.
And you get up to 120 miles an hour, 125 miles an hour in about 8 seconds. So all heck is breaking loose. And when you get to that speed trap, 1.5 seconds to cross the distance of a football field. So it is just insane. Darth Vader style helmets, the skin tight rubber suits, and just all about going fast. And you could say it's scary, but you don't start at those speeds. You start low, and 60 miles an hour is crazy. You think, wow, how do I do this? And then pretty soon 60 is easy because you're doing 100 miles an hour, and then 100 is crazy. And then you go, wait, I'm doing 120 miles an hour, and then 100 is doable. So it's all, you just work your way up.
So you are actually going the length of a football field in 1.5 seconds by the time you're at the end of this chute. That's incredible.
Right. And at the bottom, and that's what the way you slow down is after the speed trap, you stand up and throw your arms out and you just slow down, slow down, slow down. And that's when you get that adrenaline rush that, wow, I want to do that again.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's awesome, man. Wow. So I'm excited to hear about, of course, what this methodology was and what you came up with that launched you not only 136 miles an hour eventually, but into the top 10 in the world. So tell us a little bit about that. Obviously, we want to know. So
let me use a little metaphor that ended up being a book I wrote called The Ant and the Elephant. And it was the sports psychologist, Dr. Lee Poulos, found that in a second of time, your conscious mind is processing with 2,000 neurons, while the subconscious mind is processing with 4 billion neurons.
Wow.
So right now you're listening to what I have to say, and people are watching thinking he looks like the old man from Up, whatever you're thinking consciously with 2,000 neurons. But in the same second, 4 billion neurons below consciousness. So the ratio between the conscious and subconscious mind's activity is the exact same ratio between an ant and an elephant. So the ant on the back of the elephant says, hey, I want to go to the Olympic Games. But the elephant says, you don't know anything about ski racing. You don't know how to get there. And so effectively, the program was based on aligning 4 billion neurons with 2,000 neurons of intention. And so, but it's the human condition. Consciously we make a decision, to go on a diet. And so you start, or I'm going to go west, says the ant on the back of the elephant, starts marching west. But what if the elephant is headed east, right? You can end up east going, how did I end up here? So I want to go on a diet, right? And then you could end up walking out of the shower, look in the mirror going, well, that's not working. So how do you get your ant and elephant pointed in the same direction? 2,000 neurons and 4 billion neurons. And when I figured that out in sport, I then realized that we could do that in sales as well, or leadership. When people have an emotional buzz, and in this case, it was marching in the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games. And that's not realistic. It just felt right. There was no explanation why it felt right, but that's a litmus test for aligning your ant and elephant. And that program, just making sure mental training was part of the program, beyond just visualization and imagery. I was doing stuff like experientialization, and I was doing things like using gold dots to stay on course. So the gold dot would be a trigger for where you want to go. When you see that gold dot, you go, oh yeah, the emotional buzz. And when you have the emotional buzz, then it ends up being this alignment of the ant and the elephant, and 2,000 neurons, 4 billion neurons headed in the same direction. Things get a whole lot easier. So that's how it worked.
That's amazing. So, so there were practices, daily practices, and
Yeah.
and lists and tools and goals.
Over 2 hours a day, of mental training, from biofeedback, sensory deprivation, float tanks, hypnosis programs, visualization and imagery, experientialization, like I said, meditation, and pulling all those different tools together and there's a philosophy, and it's, when we're in a competitive landscape, we often identify who our competition is in ski racing or in sales, whatever. And we want to do what the competition is not doing. But the deciding factor, the thing that made a massive difference on this journey, is to identify who the competition is and do what they're not willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And not just any competition. In order to compete for your country, for Canada or the US, you have to, in Canada, it's the top 16 in the world, right? So if you're 17th place or lower, you don't go. So immediately, even at a local race, you identify the competition as the best in the world, the top 16 in the world, because you're not going to the Olympic Games unless you're top 16.
Mm-hmm.
So to do what they're not doing would be a tall order, but in a heartbeat, you could do what they're not willing to do. So it's not necessarily working harder. It's in fact, the Olympic motto, Citius Altius Fortius, which is swifter, higher, stronger. I added a fourth one, which was smartiest. How much smarter can you compete to be able to supersede what the competition is not willing to do? How much? So I was interviewing people that got PhDs in the politics and sport, aerodynamic principles. I was just doing what the competition wasn't willing to do. And one of those things, as you said, was the tools of mental training.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that book, again, that you ended up writing was called The Ant and the Elephant?
Right. So it's a parable. And, but it is in that book is the formula that I use to get to the Olympic Games,
right?
Which very briefly is clarify where you want to go, raise your level of commitment to a process of commitment, not episodic commitment. Like just saying you're not really in until you're constantly re-upping.
Right.
And then consistency, do what the competition's not willing to do. Confidence, that's 80% of the game in any sport or any kind of business, when you have confidence, but it comes from experience. What if you don't have the experience? So being able to create confidence through certain tools, and then can't control the environment, but you can control what you bring to that environment. And so there are routines that you can do to set up peak performance. And if you go through those 5 C's, you'll end up probably further and faster, getting there faster than you ever imagined.
I love that. I love that you really simplified it there.
Yeah.
And that book was the New York Times bestseller, I assume?
That was an international bestseller. It's so funny. That's outsold my book, the New York Times bestseller called The Age of Speed, like 5-6 times over.
Oh, wow.
But it's just been this perennial seller. LeBron James, I was just reading Sports Illustrated one day, and LeBron James says, what made a difference was the ant and the elephant. It was like,
oh
who
my
knew?
Gosh.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I never knew that. I love that.
Yeah.
So hopefully this new book is even bigger than those 2 books were. And of course, it's coming out in less than 2 weeks. And again, what was the subtitle? It was The Earthquake, and the subtitle was?
Earthquake, Your Journey From Setback to Breakthrough.
So what inspired?
Well, let me give you a bit of the opening line of that book is there's no linear way out of chaos. And what's fascinating to me about that phrase is what I just gave you in The Ant and the Elephant is a very linear, prescriptive methodology, how to get from where you are, establish what that big ass goal is, and then getting to that end game, that oasis in the book. Mm-hmm. Well, what if you go through a personal earthquake, right? What if you go through a massive bankruptcy or a divorce or cancer, something financial, physical, whatever it is, you're debilitated, you're stuck. And this book is somewhat autobiographical, because when we went through the downturn in 2008, I was just like, I was just nothing. I couldn't do anything wrong until that point. And then everything just went boom, 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 like this. And everything I'd bet money on and everything that I'd invested in, it just caved in, and I leveraged big time, which was, I guess, a mistake looking back, but a crystal ball would have been handy. But anyway, so when you go through a personal earthquake, mm-hmm. I was so frustrated that what got me to the Olympic Games was not working in this present earthquake. what got me to the New York Times bestselling list or the Hall of Fame for speakers, all these different achievements, all these things that I drove towards weren't working in an earthquake. And so
Right.
if there's no linear way out of chaos, then what is the way out of chaos, right? How do you do that? And so this book is again, a parable about the ant and the elephant. But what's fascinating about how to get out of an earthquake is the relationship between your ant and elephant. It supersedes just the ant and the elephant being aligned. It gets down to, well, what if the subconscious mind is headed in a completely different direction, right? Wait a minute, I don't want to feel that pain anymore. Wait a minute, I don't want to feel that feeling of helplessness. I want to stay stuck. I'm not going to move. If I just stay here and don't do anything, maybe I don't deserve it. All these kind of psychobabble, subconscious limiting beliefs can hold us back, and being able to direct the personal intention and the subconscious agenda and get those going in the same direction is much more of a process, and it unfolds in the book itself.
So it sounds similar to the other book, but it's an updated version because it's more.
No, it's not similar, because the ant and the elephant were they had challenges along the way, but it wasn't a relationship between the conscious and subconscious mind. It was more along the lines of an academic, things like the gold dot were tools to be able to create that alignment. A gold dot doesn't work in an earthquake. It doesn't. This little trigger reminder and affirmation, is just trite. And so to be able to create more of the process, I call it the solution loop. And it's just a whole methodology that's different. And people will relate to it if they've gone through an earthquake or use it as a tool. And I'm really excited that leaders could use this to be able to get everybody to coalesce in their organization, having gone through this freaking pandemic. Right. And everything just, 10 years of change happened in a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And what to do next and the uncertainty and all that. There's a lot going on at the subconscious level with everybody that works for us, and everybody's scratching their head. What? People are leaving their jobs? Why? Where are the people going? What's going on? Where are the truckers? There's so many things going on right now that's so uncertain and confusing that creating that kind of stability is important.
Yeah. And so were you writing the book before the pandemic, or did you write it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, well, this is going to help me. This is going to inspire me to finish this book and give you some more. Did it change the direction of the book?
No, not at all. It actually revealed what I basically wrote the book before the pandemic, and through the editing process, I went with 3 editors, one after the other. And as the pandemic was kind of unfolding during that editing process, there's evidence in the book that it's not just about these personal earthquakes, it's about polarity, right? How polarity stands in the way of progress. Which is a societal, political, example. Being able to, the second piece is being able that relationship of a relationship book. It's almost like this, Chris. It's almost like if the conscious and subconscious mind are 2 entities in a relationship, or think of a marriage, right? You and your wife, you've got your hand on the steering wheel. She's got her hand on the steering wheel, and you're in the same vehicle, right? How's that working out for you? It's like, no, like you. And then we think collaboration is, well, I'll take a turn for a bit and then you take a turn. Well, that's not how you drive a vehicle when this vehicle is called you. And so to be able to have the ant and the elephant let go of the way they think this should be done, letting go of, well, I know how to go forward because it got me here. What got you here isn't necessarily going to get you there. And in this dynamic of a relationship, creating what Harville Hendricks calls the third reality, which is creating this new solution that is alignment, that is completely separated from what you ever have known in the past. And we flippantly call it pivoting, or flippantly call it reinvention. You can say those words all day long, but that is a tall order when somebody's got their hand on the steering wheel trying to control what they've got going on. So it ended up being much more of a book about our world today and the way our place in it, and how we can just create more equanimity rather than having this struggle that seems to happen all the time.
Yeah. And what are you hearing mostly from the customers that are hiring you now to speak virtually and in person recently and going forward? Are you hearing a similar theme from everybody where you're like, oh, my book is perfect for that. I'm perfect for that. This is great. Are you starting to hear the same kind of issues that people are dealing with right now that they're bringing you in for?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a massive amount of uncertainty, number one.
Right.
And when we go through an earthquake, a personal one, or a corporate one, or a societal one, this uncertainty can keep us so stuck that we don't know how to move forward. And to a person, every leader I've pulled aside and talked to, they don't know what to do exactly. They're just making the best guess they can, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just endemic through the entire organization that this uncertainty can really debilitate us. Now, certainty in the face of chaos is trivial. Like to think that that's actually, you would have certainty of what's going to happen in this chaos. It's just not going to happen. But there are certain ways that you can step up and have us do what we're really good at. And that's the conscious and subconscious mind internally, but also the forces at play in the book, The Earthquake, is there's the ant and the elephant want to get somewhere, and Mother Nature says, no, these are the rules. That you could call that the market conditions. The market conditions are going to dictate where you're going to go. Mm-hmm. And therefore, how are you going to create a third reality? How are you going to create a new way, an alignment with new market conditions or fluctuating market conditions? And so that ends up being the process of it rather than what we're used to, which is a very episodic approach to achievement. Okay, what are we going to do? What's our 3-month plan? What's our 9-month? Let's take our 1-year plan and work it backwards and all that kind of stuff. Good luck, because the whole process of staying in this dynamic is going to take us further. And so that's what I'm hearing more than anything. And a little side piece I'm hearing is engagement. And it is so critical for us in this business, Chris, you and I, to create an experience for our audiences. I mean, that's why, I'll give you an example how I start. I used to start by saying, at age 26, I'd never ski raced before. At age 30, I was vying for the gold medal in the Olympic Games. What I'd like to share with you is a formula that would take us forward. So blah, blah, blah. So that's reasonably engaging. Yeah. Now I say, you're standing. This is the first thing I say. You might wonder what it's like to ski 135 miles an hour. You're standing on the side of a 42-degree slope. You're going to go 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds, up to 125 miles an hour in 8 seconds. All heck is going to break loose. You want to be in a tight aerodynamic tuck. You're wearing a skin-tight rubber suit, Darth Vader style helmet. Your heart's beating here, working its way up to the base of your throat. All right. So the difference between, opening number one and this one I just said was this is an experience. Yeah. And you never forget an experience.
That's right.
You never forget an experience. What if you took content and infused it into that experience? And so that's why when I wrote this book, I was going, okay, what if you had a parable about an ant? What happened next? I mean, my theme that I worked towards was make it Pixar worthy. Right? Mm-hmm. To make it so experiential in nature that you just are drawn into the story, and then the content is infused much better in terms of people internalizing it rather than just kind of consciously processing it and going, okay, I get it. I think I can relate to that. I think I'll take a note and I'll remind myself. I mean, the experiential nature of our business is so much more important. And we're doing a lot of this virtually as well still, which doesn't seem to be going away any day soon. So to have the virtual sessions that we're doing, or the live sessions as well, again, the experience of the session, the experience of the keynote will make it much more profound and answer that question, how do I keep my people more engaged? Right? Because people are leaving where they're going. They're not staying. They're not being loyal. What's going on out there? Right? Well, engagement is critical. So that's that. I'm spending so much of my time right now on that part and dealing with leaders, and much more time up front consulting on that side of things, because it just ends up being, when they're really honest, what they're saying is just, gosh, what have you seen? What's working? And I've actually helped leaders with their storytelling, which is really interesting. I didn't see myself doing that down the road, but that's been a byproduct of what's going on as well, is how they can give more engaged presentations.
Yeah, that's definitely something that you have been known for. And I remember that again from that first video I saw, how engaging you were, and how you immediately draw the audience in and connect with them and make them a part of the experience where they're living, your experience, and they're feeling that. Yeah, and you're really one of the best at it. And I'm thinking about this chaos thing a little bit too. It's interesting to me because it seems like when you're hitting those speeds of crazy speeds, that is chaos. Like, really you're kind of trying to control chaos there. And you have some, some ways of doing it that'll always work a little bit, but the chaos can still overpower you. I mean, I'm sure before you were in the Olympics practicing all these times, you fell quite a bit, and you got hurt, and the wind and the edges of the skis didn't go the way, and they knocked you over, right?
Yeah. I've crashed 3 times, each time about 100 miles an hour. And one way to describe it is I call it, the expression, uh-oh. In skiing, it's up.
There's no time for the
But this chaos, let me give you a little leadership tip here that your viewers can use. And in the state of chaos, in real time speed, when things are happening so fast with chaos all around you, 100% of the time, there was this invisible pocket that you could be in, meaning you could actually get to the line of chaos, like you were thrown into it. But if you had the basics, if you were over your skis, if you were stable, you were going to do well. And one of the funny things about skiing, do you ski?
Yeah.
All right. So whenever I've taught people skiing, I'll actually do it with my hands. Okay. On perpendicular ground, you're going to stand upright. Now, however steep it gets, you want to stay perpendicular to the slope like this. What people do when they're struggling is they lean away from the danger. Or if they're type A, rugged individual, gonna MacGyver this thing, they lean into it. And so when you overextend or you lean away from it, you're going to have issues. And so the same deal goes with whether it's skiing or the business, the landscape of uncertainty, whatever grade and speed we're dealing with, staying over those skis in that perpendicular stance. And that's just the basics of, I'm in this pocket and stuff can go by. And then when you get to the bottom in a speed skiing race and everything went well, that adrenaline rush is just, I don't know where it comes from, but I know where it goes. It just right out the ends of your fingers and toes. It's like this.
Right.
And then you go, well, I want to do that again. So yeah, never forget that feeling.
Yeah. So in other words, embrace the chaos, but know where you're supposed to be, and don't be too worried about the external factors of where you are, because you got to stay within yourself and not try and do something too drastic, but also, be comfortable enough to kind of stand on your own 2 feet.
Right.
I think a lot of people are panicking, through a pandemic, and they're making decisions that maybe they should have just waited on, or they're also, of course, thinking of the worst possible outcomes and how bad this all is, rather than the things they can do to, get through it, and the things they can do, the control they do have to put them through that. So I think that's something that sounds like you've talked a lot about with the chaos and with this whole subconscious, what your subconscious telling you. Is the subconscious normally going negative?
No, but there are negative patterns that exist there. And if you feed those negative patterns, if you give them attention, it's a universal truth. You'll gravitate towards your current dominant thought. So what is your dominant thought? Let me ask a second question. Are you the architect for your dominant thought? Are you taking the emotional buzz that I call it, this where we want to end up? This is where we're going to end up. I was just talking to a buddy earlier today. He's got a family issue going on. And I said, the best thing you could do, I went back to when I was ski racing, selling real estate to be my own sponsor. And this seasoned realtor came into this negotiation, and it was really not going to work out because I knew what my guy wanted to do, and I knew the seller was so far apart. And the first thing this guy said is, today, together, we're going to sell this house. That's where we're headed. And then everybody just snapped to attention and went, oh, yeah.
That's why we're here.
Right? That's why we're here. And it became so clear that okay, you're going to march in the opening ceremonies, right? How awesome would that feel to do that as a 26-year-old, to have that emotional buzz, not just a goal that's saying, oh, let's say a goal is I have $10 million net worth. Well, what does that mean, right? What if at a $10 million resort in Puerto Vallarta that I'm hosting a family and I'm flying them in for a family reunion and we're all getting together, that has an emotional buzz attached to it. So the emotional quotient is so important today because it ends up being the opportunity for a dominant thought. If you gravitate towards a dominant thought, are you the architect for that thought? And so leadership is so much about communication. And today, so much more. If people are remote, how often are you communicating the emotional quotient? Where do you want to end up? What does it feel like? How do you feel? Raising our kids, they're all in their early 20s. We would never say, if they got a good grade on their exam or they did something, we'd never say, oh, that's great, honey, you did great. We would say, wow, how does that feel? Right? And they go, oh, it feels great. And I did this. So that feeling ends up manifesting that momentum, if you will.
And then wanting to do it again, the relationship between that feeling and
right.
as the result of your work.
That's right. Amazing. And for themselves, not for anybody else. And that's leadership. That's Absolutely. Leadership, to have people really instilled an internal compass of this is exactly where we're going to sell this house. We're going to end up here. We're going to have that place in Puerto Vallarta, whatever.
I love that. And you are leading people right now into the mountains of the Himalayas. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've led some expeditions since 2006. We have a mutual friend, Jeff Sauls, who passed away not even a year ago.
Yeah.
He introduced me to these climbs in the Himalayas, and I've since led some climbs and carry on his legacy in that way. And I've always taken novices, and I always make sure that they're non-technical, that we're not hanging off the Eiger sanction on a rope going, I'm gonna die. So none of that. It's fun. And then facilitating the conversations. Here's what's interesting about these expeditions. It ends up being the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life. And when people are raw, they're not on their best behavior anymore.
Yeah.
Their true personality traits that they've been hiding or holding back surface, right? And so facilitating those conversations in the tent, or facilitating hurt conversations that happen throughout the day, or somebody just losing it, is really it's a process of self-discovery to take groups up to these mountains. So we're going back next year. COVID, I think, will be handled in India, and we're going to the India side of the Himalayas where nobody ever goes. Everybody goes to Nepal or the base camp. I mean, it's like a super highway of people going back and forth. Where we go, nobody goes. And we end up naming mountains after everyday heroes. And this next mountain summit that we want to name after Jeff Sauls, actually. And
That's
just
awesome.
an iconic speaker. And we've talked to him before. He's just such a great guy.
Yeah, he will be missed, and he was a friend. And it's sad that so many people, of course, during COVID passed away.
He was one of them. Yeah,
it's a tough thing for all of us to get through together, but at least we have each other.
Yeah,
to get through it together. And Vince, you're just such a great speaker. I know whenever I pitch you, whenever you are booked by somebody, I know it's an automatic rave review. You're just solid as a rock, and I'm so excited to read this new book and see what that has in it for me, because I know there's always some great stuff in there with everything. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I really love how deep you go into how we, are listening to ourselves and what we're saying to ourselves, and how we, can really chart our own courses. It's really such great stuff, Vince. So thanks so much for coming on and coming here with me and having this conversation.
Well, you're welcome. And to that point, Chris, when you have a client and they hire me, they're hiring me for all the content and the value and the takeaways that their people can have. 100% of the time after a speech, people will come up and say how they were personally affected by it, how they were personally moved. And so that union of the personal and professional comes together at these keynote opportunities. And although it is just an hour, it's a pretty strong hour. And working with you over these years, when you called about this, I was like, heck yeah, I'll get on your show. That's fun. Let's do this.
Yeah. And I'm excited that your book is coming out in 2 weeks. Perfect timing.
Yep.
Excited. That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. I hope it's a big earthquake for you.
And, good one. Yeah.
I'll look forward to talking to you real soon, my friend. Thanks so much again.
Take care, Chris. Bye-bye.
All right, you too. Bye.